In the vast archives of Sherlock Holmes, one case stands out as the cornerstone of his career. One that started it all. One that led to the making of a legend. The case of the Gloria Scott. Holmes was only 20 then. He was invited by his only friend in college, Victor Trevor, to spend the summer with Victor's family in Norfolk. It had been a long time since Sherlock had received such an invitation. He was very thrilled by the journey and was received warmly in the Trevor household. Victor's only family was his father, Mr. James Trevor. Mr. James was a pillar of the community. He was also the Justice of the Peace in Norfolk. They spent the first few days in leisurely activities, but Sherlock tried to remove himself from all of that. He wanted to view the world in a different way. The world was a puzzle to him. Even then, he was honing his deduction skills. Mr. James was fascinated by the observation skills of Sherlock. One day, during a tea session, Mr. James challenged Sherlock to find if there were any flaws in his history. Holmes was thrilled by the challenge. It was not often that he received such chances to prove his hidden talent. He started to scan Mr. James. He spotted a faint tattoo that spelled the letters J.A. on his wrist. Then his gaze fell upon Mr. James's feet, where he saw a small indentation at the ankle. Holmes first asked about the tattoo. Mr. James claimed that they were his initials. But Holmes knew that was a lie, since his name was James Trevor. But he didn't speak it out. He then remarked that Mr. James was a prisoner in the past, and pointed at the indentation in his ankles, claiming that they were the marks of shackles. Mr. James didn't have an answer to that remark. He looked heartbroken. There was total silence for a moment. Victor was surprised at his father's silence and felt disappointed. Holmes started to feel the gloominess in the air. He retreated to his room soon after that. During the night, he kept thinking about the incident. He now understood that truth can be a weapon that can wound the guilty as well as the innocent. The very next day, he apologized to Mr. James. But the blow was done, and the mood in the house changed from that point onwards. Then, a few days later, came a guest, a man who looked more like a vagabond, Mr. Hudson. Mr. James saw the arriving Hudson. He looked like as if he saw a ghost from the past. Hudson moved in like a parasite. He took the best of everything, and Mr. James offered it all with the desperation of a man paying blackmail. Victor saw all of this at first hand. He couldn't endure the sight of his father's humiliation. He reached a breaking point and confronted Hudson. Mr. James had to intervene to stop the confrontation. He then begged Victor to ask for Hudson's forgiveness. Victor had to give in to his father's request and apologized to Hudson. Thinking that he was the catalyst to all of the misery at the Trevor Manor, Sherlock decided to go back to London the very next day. A few weeks later, Holmes received a telegram. It was a call for help from Victor. Holmes had to return to Norfolk once more. But this time, Victor's father was no longer there to greet him. He had passed away a few days ago. Victor requested Sherlock to help him unravel the mystery of his father's death. Mr. James had received a letter a few days prior to his passing. The content of the letter, whatever it was, completely destroyed him. He was restless from the moment he read it and fell into a stroke a few hours later. Before he died, he told of a statement that he kept in his cabinet and asked Victor only to read it after his death. But Victor was fearful of the truth and didn't have the courage to read it. But he did take a look at the letter that his father received. It looked like complete gibberish to him. That's why he had to ask for Sherlock's help. Sherlock took a look at the letter. It was posted from Hampshire. To a normal person, it would look like complete gibberish, but to him, it was a hidden cipher. He read the letter word by word. The supply of game for London is now going up. Headkeeper Hudson, we believe, has been now told to receive all orders for flypaper and for preservation of your hen pheasant's life. The key to this puzzle was rhythm. Every third word was a pulse, and the rest was just gibberish. Holmes wrote down the decoded message. The game is up. Hudson has told all. Fly for your life. Holmes asked Victor whether his father knew anyone in Hampshire. Victor thought for a moment and then remembered overhearing Hudson telling his father that he was going to stay with a certain Mr. Beddoes in Hampshire. He had also heard of an acquaintance of his father named Beddoes. Sherlock concluded that the letter might have come from Mr. Beddoes or even from Hudson. He then asked Victor to show him the statement that his father had left for him. Reluctantly, Victor agreed. At this point, he needed to know the truth about the relation between his father and Hudson. They took the statement from the cabinet. It was a confession. 30 years ago, Mr. James was a prisoner on a ship named the Gloria Scott, set sail for Australia. His name was James Armitage at that time. He was betrayed by a banking partner and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was one among many prisoners set to be deported and jailed in Australia. But during the voyage, a mutiny broke out in the ship. The prisoners, fueled by the promise of freedom, were on one side, while the officers, driven by duty, were on the other. Due to their higher number, the prisoners were easily able to overrun the officers and took control of the ship. They took their revenge with blood and showed no mercy. Seeing the bloodlust of their comrades, James and a few others decided to flee the ship. They took a lifeboat and rowed their way to safety. Mr. Beddoes was one among them. But a few minutes after they left, the Gloria Scott erupted in a ball of fire. they decided to row back to the wreckage to see if there were any survivors. Once they reached it, there seemed to be no sign of life, so they decided to leave. But as soon as they started to row back, James heard a cry for help. It was a seaman who worked in the ship. His name was Hudson. They rescued him, and together they rowed their way to Australia. In order to hide their criminal past, James and the others decided to change their names, all except Hudson. Apart from them, Hudson was the only one who knew the truth. But they decided to show mercy and let him leave. They didn't know that this mistake one day would come back to haunt them. Sherlock and Victor now knew the truth. And according to the letter, the secret that Mr. James had held for all these years was now out to the public, all because of Hudson. Sherlock couldn't stand the heartbreak of his only friend, so he left for London that night. He now learned that behind every fortune there's a hidden crime, and that some truths are best left buried.